Trump's life is not going well. I'm assuming if you're here and you're watching, it's because you pay attention to the news. So we're all familiar with kind of everything that happened on Monday as the fallout from the Alex Preddy shooting continued to mount for this administration. Obviously, a lot happened with Kristi Noem, with Greg Bovino being demoted, moved out, moved on, probably going to be resigning soon is the going theory, I guess we'll call it. But that's not the funniest part. The funniest part is that his entire administration right now just at each other's throats, ripping each other apart, trying to save their own jobs by costing others theirs. It is, in fact, an internal civil war taking place within the Trump administration. And there's multiple different factions here, all of them going against each other, and that's the best part. It's not just two sides. There's at least 3 different gaggles of morons all fighting to not be canned. First fight. You got Kristi Noem and her maybe boyfriend / advisor Corey Lewandowski up against Stephen Miller and Susie Wiles, Donald Trump's chief of staff and deputy chief of staff. According to the reports, Noem and Lewandowski in one corner, Miller and Wiles in the other, because Wiles and Miller are upset that Kristi Noem is so incompetent and, of course, put a guy like Greg Bovino in charge of basically being not just the guy in Minnesota, but the public face of this whole let's get as many immigrants out of the country as possible fiasco. Before I continue, let me make one thing crystal clear so that everybody gets it. Nobody in this administration is angry or upset about the deaths. That's not what they're mad about. That's not what they're fighting about. None of them are actually mad that innocent Americans are being executed on our streets. That's not the problem for them. The problem is the optics. The problem is that this forces more people who otherwise would continue to ignore it to focus on Donald Trump's deportation policies, the inhumane treatment of people at the hands of ICE. In other words, it jeopardizes their master plan of getting as many people out of the country as possible. That's what they're upset about. So Wiles and Miller are mad that Lewandowski and Noem are so stupid and incompetent that they have allowed this chaos to happen, putting Bovino in charge, going out there in the media, calling these people domestic terrorists for filming ICE agents, but not about the death. Stephen Miller wants this to happen. He just doesn't want it to be public. Susie Wiles, kind of same thing. Susie Wiles does also understand, though, that this administration was already falling apart long before they started murdering people in the streets. Trump's approval rating was dismal before the deaths began on every single issue, including immigration, but now his polling on immigration is getting so much worse. And that, of course, for these advisors, this is a reflection on them, right? They're the people who handle Trump. They're the people who tell him what to do, what not to do. He listens to them. So every time his numbers go down, every time there's bad optics on anything, it falls on those folks. And those folks are now trying to tell Trump, like, no, it's not us, man. It's Kristi Noem. You were already talking a month and a half ago about wanting to fire her, and if you had, maybe none of this would have happened. So Bovino effectively kind of becomes the fall guy here. I mean, yes, he's horrible, he's awful, he's responsible, but he's not the guy in charge. The person in charge is Kristi Noem. She's at the top. She is the one that runs all of this. Her and Corey Lewandowski made that decision to put Bovino out there because they didn't want themselves to be the public face. Kristi Noem loves to travel. She loves to dress up. She'll go to New York. She'll go to Texas. She'll go to, Colorado. She'll go to her home in South Dakota, but she's not going to go to Minnesota, right? That's not as fun as some of those other places can be. So she sent Bovino, and the rest is history. Then there's the other fight, because Caroline Leavitt yesterday refused to defend Stephen Miller, who, for the record, mad at Bovino for coming out calling Alex Preddy a domestic terrorist. Miller called him an assassin, as if that's any better. But here's what happened. During a press briefing on Monday, Caroline Leavitt was asked a question, quote, Stephen Miller on Saturday posted that, or called Preddy a would-be assassin. Why did administration officials jump to conclusions before an investigation had ever been conducted? Caroline Leavitt sheepishly responded, well, look, this has obviously been a very fluid and fast-moving situation throughout the weekend. As for President Trump, whom I speak for, he has said that he wants to let the investigation continue and let the facts lead this case. So another reporter jumps in and goes, to follow on Gabe's question, Secretary Noem said Alex Preddy committed an act of domestic terrorism. Stephen Miller labeled Preddy a domestic terrorist. Does the president agree with them? She said, look, as I've said, I have not heard the president characterize Mr. Preddy in that way. However, I have heard the president say he wants to let the facts and the investigation lead itself. So then another reporter goes, on Stephen Miller's comments, will Stephen Miller be apologizing to the family of Alex Preddy for calling him, quote, an assassin who tried to murder federal agents, despite the fact that, as you say, this is still under investigation? And at this point, Caroline's about to fall apart. Just absolutely can't do it anymore. And she's like, look, again, this incident remains under investigation, and nobody here at the White House, including the President of the United States, wants to see Americans hurt or killed and losing their lives in American streets. Wonderful. None of those were the question, though, Caroline. None of those were the questions. You were asked about people in the executive branch who work inside the White House. You are the White House press secretary, not the Donald Trump press secretary, Caroline, so you better be ready to answer those questions about the other people who work alongside Donald Trump and who, unfortunately for you, are far closer to him than you are. But you wouldn't do that. You would rather just be like, look, I don't know what these crazy people are saying. All I know is what Trump's saying. I don't know anything about Noem. Like, she's saying weird shit. Stephen Miller's saying some crazy crap. I don't know. So everybody in this administration, cabinet officials, White House staff, complete and total chaos. But not because of the death. Not because of the public executions on American streets. They're upset about the optics and what it's going to do to Donald Trump's polling. That is the most important thing to remember, because these fights will continue. The humiliations will mount. We are not done with this. We are going to continue to see more of it. And none of it is going to be about the tragic loss of life at the hands of these federal agents. Thanks for watching, and if you are not already subscribed to the channel, please do so, and do not forget to like and comment and share widely among your friends.